Clouds of Ignorance by Abdul K. Short I. Copyright 2024 Abdul K. Short I. All rights reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic, mechanical, photocopying, recording, or otherwise, without the prior written permission of the author. This book is a work of nonfiction. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental unless explicitly stated. Introduction. Welcome to Clouds of Ignorance, a book designed to shed light on the hidden and overlooked impacts of smoking. Whether you are a smoker, a non-smoker, or someone affected by secondhand or third-hand smoke, this book invites you to reflect, learn, and take action. For many, smoking is a personal choice, a habit, a coping mechanism, or a social activity. But its effects are far-reaching, impacting not only the smoker, but also their loved ones, neighbors, and even strangers. The goal of this book is not to judge or condemn, but to foster awareness and accountability. Through personal stories, research, and practical reflections, Clouds of Ignorance aims to educate readers about the ripple effects of smoking. Each chapter ends with interactive questions to encourage you to think critically and share your thoughts. By engaging with this book, you are taking the first step toward positive change. Thank you for embarking on this journey with me. Together, we can clear the air, literally and figuratively, and create a brighter, healthier future for all. The meaning of Clouds of Ignorance. The title Clouds of Ignorance draws directly from the powerful scripture Hosea 4 verse 6, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." This verse encapsulates the essence of this book and its message. Ignorance, like a cloud, blinds us to the truth. It distorts our understanding of the consequences of our actions and keeps us from taking meaningful steps toward change. The haze of ignorance allows harmful behaviors to persist, whether it's smoking, marijuana use, vaping, or the decisions that normalize them in our society. This book is not meant to judge or condemn, but to shine a light on the realities we often overlook. Like the clouds that obscure the sky, ignorance can be cleared, but only with awareness, education, and accountability. The title also serves as a reminder, while we may live under the shadow of ignorance, we are not bound to stay there. With knowledge comes empowerment. With empowerment comes transformation. And through faith, we can rise above the clouds, guided by clarity, purpose, and a commitment to do better for ourselves and for others. Clouds of Ignorance is a call to reflection and action. It invites us to examine not only the societal challenges we face, but also the role we each play in perpetuating or breaking free from the clouds that surround us. Together, we can clear the haze and step into the light of accountability and hope. Dedication. To my wife, Karen Short, for your unwavering patience, love, and the incredible strength you demonstrated through your testimony. Your dedication to seeking God's guidance and cleansing, through your commitment to Faith United Ministries, not only transformed your life, but also inspired me to rebuild my own relationship with God. You are my greatest blessing and a testament to the power of faith and perseverance. To my children, whose patience and understanding throughout this process have meant the world to me. You are my motivation and my greatest joy. To my father in the Lord, Pastor James E. Bamadelli, Sturdivant, whose encouragement and wisdom lit the path for this book. And to everyone who believes in the power of awareness to create change, this is for you. Chapter 1. The Smokescreen. A Journey Begins. Noah tightened his scarf as he stepped onto the bustling city street, the crisp morning air biting at his cheeks. It was a morning like any other, except for one detail that he could never ignore: the smoke. Clouds of it drifted lazily from the mouths of passers-by, cigarette in hand, oblivious to the discomfort their habits caused others. For Noah, the experience was all too familiar. The entrance to his apartment building was always a gathering spot for smokers. Every day, as he returned home, he had to weave through a haze of cigarette and marijuana smoke, holding his breath and quickening his pace. The smell clung to his clothes and hair, lingering long after he was indoors. Noah had grown increasingly frustrated over time. This wasn't just an annoyance, it was a health hazard. The air he breathed, the spaces he moved through, and even the clothes he wore were contaminated by smoke. He often wondered how many people in his building shared his experience but were too polite or afraid to speak up. The ignorance that clouds us. For many, smoking is a habit, a coping mechanism, or even a social activity. But for those on the receiving end, it's an intrusion, a silent yet pervasive assault on their health and well-being. Noah had always believed that most smokers weren't malicious, they simply weren't aware of the full consequences of their actions. He thought back to a memory from his childhood. His younger sister, Maya, had severe asthma. One evening, their family attended a gathering at a relative's house where people smoked indoors. Despite being in a different room, Maya's asthma flared up, leading to a frantic trip to the emergency room. That night left an indelible mark on Noah, shaping his views on smoking and its far-reaching effects. The layers of harm. Smoking isn't just a personal choice, it's a communal one. When a smoker lights up, the harm extends beyond their own lungs. Secondhand smoke, the smoke exhaled by the smoker and emitted from the burning end of the cigarette, is a known health hazard. Studies have shown that even brief exposure can cause immediate harm to the cardiovascular system. Then there's third-hand smoke, the invisible residue left on surfaces after the smoke clears. This toxic layer clings to furniture, carpets, clothing, and even walls, posing a hidden danger to anyone who comes into contact with it, especially children. For Noah, understanding these layers of harm was a call to action. He knew that awareness was the first step toward change, and he was determined to do his part. A glimmer of hope. One day, as Noah approached the entrance of his building, he noticed a group of neighbors chatting in the smoky haze. Instead of walking past silently, he decided to speak up. With a polite but firm tone, he shared his concerns about the smoke and its effects. To his surprise, some of them listened. One neighbor, a father of 2 young children, admitted he had never considered how his smoking might affect others. It was a small victory, but it gave Noah hope. Change wouldn't happen overnight, but conversations like these could plant the seeds of awareness and accountability. Interactive questionnaire for Chapter 1. Have you ever been in a situation where you were affected by secondhand or third-hand smoke? How did it make you feel? What steps do you think communities can take to reduce exposure to smoke in shared spaces? If you're a smoker, have you considered how your smoking might affect others around you? How can non-smokers effectively communicate their concerns to smokers without causing conflict? What ideas do you have for raising awareness about the dangers of secondhand and third-hand smoke? Chapter 2. The Lingering Threat, Third-Hand Smoke. Most people are aware of the dangers of secondhand smoke, but few are familiar with an even quieter menace, third-hand smoke. Unlike its more visible counterpart, third-hand smoke doesn't hover in the air. Instead, it clings to surfaces, embedding itself in furniture, walls, clothing, and even hair. For Noah, the concept of third-hand smoke was unsettling. He had first encountered it when visiting a friend's apartment. The smell of smoke was faint, but it seemed to have soaked into the very walls of the home. Noah later learned that the apartment's previous tenant had been a heavy smoker. Despite attempts to clean, the presence of third-hand smoke was undeniable, a silent reminder of its persistence. What is third-hand smoke? Third-hand smoke is the toxic residue left behind after a cigarette or marijuana has been smoked. Invisible to the naked eye, it is composed of harmful chemicals like nicotine, formaldehyde, and arsenic. Unlike second-hand smoke, which dissipates after some time, third-hand smoke lingers, embedding itself into surfaces and releasing harmful gases back into the air over time. Noah found the idea disturbing. This invisible layer of toxins could be affecting people without their knowledge. Even in homes or vehicles where smoking was no longer allowed, the remnants of past smoking sessions could continue to pose risks, especially to children and vulnerable individuals. Why is it dangerous? Children and infants are particularly vulnerable to third-hand smoke due to their behaviors, crawling on floors, putting objects in their mouths, and spending more time indoors. Research has shown that the harmful chemicals in third-hand smoke can be absorbed through the skin, ingested, or inhaled. These exposures can lead to respiratory issues, exacerbate asthma, and potentially contribute to long-term health problems like cancer. Noah often thought about the parents who unknowingly exposed their children to these risks. How many families had moved into homes with third-hand smoke residue without realizing the hidden danger? How many children played on furniture or rugs that were contaminated? The challenge of eradication. Removing third-hand smoke is far more challenging than simply airing out a room. The residue bonds with surfaces, requiring deep cleaning or even complete replacement of furniture and carpeting in extreme cases. Noah had read about homes where repainting the walls and replacing the flooring were necessary to reduce contamination. This reality highlighted the importance of prevention. By keeping smoking out of indoor spaces entirely, individuals could protect themselves and their loved ones from this silent threat. A call for awareness. One weekend, Noah volunteered at a community health fair, handing out pamphlets about third-hand smoke. To his surprise, many attendees were hearing about it for the first time. Parents expressed concern, asking how they could protect their children. Smokers seemed taken aback, some even resolving to stop smoking indoors. Noah realized that awareness was the key to change. Many people simply didn't know about third-hand smoke and its dangers. By educating communities, he believed that meaningful steps could be taken to reduce exposure and improve health outcomes. Interactive questionnaire for Chapter 2. Did you know about the concept of third-hand smoke before reading this chapter? How has it changed your perspective on smoking indoors? Have you ever experienced the lingering smell of smoke in a home, car, or public space? What steps, if any, did you take to address it? What measures can smokers take to prevent third-hand smoke from affecting their surroundings? How can communities raise awareness about third-hand smoke and its long-term effects? If you're a parent, how would you educate your children about the dangers of third-hand smoke? Chapter 3. The Cost of Convenience. Smoking in Vehicles. Noah sat in his car, waiting at a red light. To his left, a woman was smoking with the windows rolled up, 2 children sitting in the back seat. The sight was almost too much for him to bear. He couldn't help but wonder if she knew the harm she was causing to herself and her children, or if she cared. Smoking in vehicles is one of the most confined ways to expose others to secondhand and third-hand smoke. Unlike open spaces, a car traps the harmful chemicals, creating an environment where toxins are not just inhaled, but embedded into the upholstery, dashboard, and ventilation system. The confined cloud. Vehicles present unique challenges when it comes to smoking. Even with the windows rolled down, the smoke has limited places to escape, forcing passengers, whether adults or children, to inhale harmful chemicals. Research shows that smoking in cars creates a concentration of toxins up to 10 times higher than what's found in smoky bars. For children, the risks are even greater. Their smaller lungs and developing immune systems make them more susceptible to the effects of secondhand smoke. Beyond immediate exposure, the third-hand smoke residue left behind in a car lingers, creating long-term risks for anyone who rides in the vehicle. Noah had seen this play out in his own family. His cousin, a smoker, often lit up while driving, despite having young children in the car. Over time, the children began to show signs of chronic respiratory issues, including asthma. It wasn't until their pediatrician explicitly linked their symptoms to secondhand smoke exposure that his cousin began to rethink his habits. Why do people smoke in cars? For many smokers, a car is seen as a private space, free from judgment or restrictions. It's a place where they can indulge in their habit without the prying eyes of non-smokers or public bans. However, this sense of privacy often blinds smokers to the shared nature of the space, especially when passengers are involved. Noah believed that much of this behavior stemmed from ignorance rather than malice. Many smokers simply didn't realize the extent of the harm they were causing or the lasting effects of their actions. The residue that stays. One of the most insidious aspects of smoking in vehicles is third-hand smoke. Unlike second-hand smoke, which dissipates quickly, third-hand smoke settles into the fabric, plastic, and metal of the car. It doesn't just stay there, it releases harmful gases back into the air over time, creating a continuous source of exposure. Cleaning a car thoroughly enough to remove third-hand smoke is nearly impossible. Standard cleaning methods may remove visible dirt and stains, but the toxic residue lingers in places that are difficult to reach, such as air vents and beneath seats. A vision for change. Noah knew that addressing this issue required more than just individual action, it required societal change. Some jurisdictions had already implemented laws banning smoking in cars when children were present, but enforcement was inconsistent. He believed that education was just as important as legislation. By helping people understand the risks, they could begin to make better choices, not just for themselves, but for their families and communities. Noah began advocating for smoke-free vehicles in his community. He spoke at local schools, handed out flyers, and even partnered with a car wash to raise awareness about the dangers of smoking in cars. His efforts were met with mixed reactions, but he remained committed to the cause. Interactive questionnaire for Chapter 3. Have you ever ridden in a car where someone was smoking? How did it make you feel? Do you think laws banning smoking in cars with children should be enforced more strictly? Why or why not? If you're a smoker, what steps can you take to ensure your habits don't affect others in your car? How can we encourage smokers to make their vehicles smoke-free spaces? What role do you think community education plays in addressing the issue of smoking in cars? Chapter 4. The Unseen Ripple, Smoking Around Children. Children are among the most vulnerable to the effects of smoking, yet they are often the silent victims in households and public spaces where smoking occurs. For Noah, this realization struck him deeply when he witnessed a mother smoking while holding her toddler's hand. The child's wide, innocent eyes seemed unaware of the invisible harm surrounding them. The weight of responsibility. Smoking around children isn't just a personal choice, it's a decision that has lifelong consequences for those too young to speak up. Children's developing lungs and weaker immune systems make them especially susceptible to the dangers of secondhand and third-hand smoke. Noah remembered his niece, Ava, who had suffered from chronic ear infections as a child. The doctors eventually traced the issue back to second-hand smoke exposure, even though her parents didn't smoke. The source was a grandparent who often lit up in the family home, believing it was harmless since they smoked in another room. Immediate and long-term effects. The effects of second-hand smoke on children are both immediate and long-term. Exposure can lead to respiratory infections, increased risks of bronchitis, pneumonia, and asthma attacks. Chronic conditions, persistent coughing, wheezing, and difficulty breathing. Developmental issues. Some studies suggest a link between smoke exposure and delayed cognitive or behavioral development. Third-hand smoke adds another layer of harm. Residue left on furniture, toys, and clothes can be ingested or absorbed through the skin, creating a continuous cycle of exposure. For infants and toddlers who crawl and explore their surroundings, the risks are even higher. A shared responsibility. For Noah, the issue went beyond the individual smoker. He believed society as a whole had a responsibility to protect children from smoke exposure. This included schools, daycare centers, and community spaces taking active measures to educate parents and caregivers. He often wondered how many adults truly understood the harm they were causing. Did they see their actions as harmless, or were they unaware of the invisible dangers? He hoped that by shining a light on these issues, he could inspire change. Turning awareness into action. One evening, Noah attended a community meeting where parents discussed ways to improve local playgrounds. He used the opportunity to bring up the topic of smoking around children, suggesting designated smoke-free zones in parks and recreational areas. To his surprise, many parents supported the idea, sharing their own frustrations about smoking near children. The meeting led to a petition, and within months, the local government passed an ordinance banning smoking in public parks. It was a small but significant step toward creating a safer environment for children. Interactive questionnaire for Chapter 4. Have you ever seen someone smoking around children? How did you feel about it? What steps can parents and caregivers take to protect children from secondhand and third-hand smoke? How can schools and community organizations raise awareness about the risks of smoking around children? Do you think laws banning smoking near children should be expanded? Why or why not? What role do you think education plays in preventing children from being exposed to smoke? Chapter 5. The Smell That Stays, Public Spaces and Smoking. Noah walked into his local grocery store, the automatic doors sliding open to welcome him. Yet, before he could take his first step inside, he was met with a wave of cigarette smoke. A group of smokers had congregated near the entrance, their conversations punctuated by puffs of smoke that drifted into the building. The acrid smell clung to Noah's clothes and hair, a reminder that even public spaces weren't immune to the effects of smoking. The impact on shared spaces. Public spaces are meant to be inclusive and welcoming, but smoking often creates barriers. For non-smokers, navigating through a cloud of smoke outside a restaurant, office building, or public park can be both unpleasant and harmful. Noah often wondered why some smokers seemed indifferent to the discomfort they caused. Studies show that smoke near building entrances often makes its way indoors, compromising air quality for everyone inside. This spillover effect highlights the need for stricter enforcement of smoke-free zones around public spaces. The social divide. Noah observed that smoking in public spaces often created a divide between smokers and non-smokers. While some smokers made efforts to be considerate, stepping away from entrances or finding designated smoking areas, others seemed unaware of the impact their actions had on those around them. For Noah, this wasn't just about physical health. It was about fostering a sense of community where everyone felt respected. Smokers and non-smokers needed to find common ground, and that began with awareness and open dialogue. The persistence of third-hand smoke. One of the lesser-known consequences of smoking in public spaces is third-hand smoke. Residue from cigarettes can linger on benches, railings, and other surfaces, creating an invisible hazard for children, pets, and even unsuspecting adults. Noah had seen parents place their toddlers on park benches without realizing the surface was contaminated with harmful chemicals. The thought of children being exposed to these toxins fueled Noah's determination to raise awareness. He began working with local organizations to educate the public about third-hand smoke and its long-lasting effects. Advocating for change. Noah believed that change didn't have to come from confrontation, it could stem from cooperation. He started by engaging with local businesses, encouraging them to move designated smoking areas further from entrances. Many owners were receptive, realizing that creating a smoke-free environment could enhance their customers' experiences. In addition, Noah pushed for clearer signage about smoke-free zones. He worked with city officials to install signs that reminded people of the smoking restrictions in parks and near public buildings. These small changes gradually made a noticeable difference. Interactive questionnaire for Chapter 5. Have you ever felt uncomfortable or unsafe due to smoking in a public space? What was the situation? Do you think businesses should take more responsibility in enforcing smoke-free zones? Why or why not? How can communities encourage smokers to be more considerate in public spaces? What ideas do you have for reducing the impact of smoking near building entrances? How can public awareness campaigns address the issue of third-hand smoke in shared spaces? Chapter 6. The Workplace Challenge, Smoking at the Office. Noah leaned against the railing outside his office building, clutching his coffee cup tightly. He wasn't there to enjoy the fresh air, rather, he was avoiding the cluster of coworkers smoking a few feet away. The smoke drifted toward him, making him wince as the sharp smell of cigarettes overpowered the scent of his morning brew. For Noah, the issue wasn't just the inconvenience, it was the larger question of how workplaces navigated the tension between smokers and non-smokers. How could employers balance personal freedom with the need for a healthy, productive environment? The impact on non-smokers. Workplaces are meant to be spaces of collaboration and respect, but smoking often creates an unintentional divide. For non-smokers, exposure to secondhand smoke during breaks or in shared outdoor areas can feel like a violation of their personal space. Noah recalled a former coworker, Sarah, who struggled with severe asthma. Even brief exposure to cigarette smoke during lunch breaks triggered coughing fits and left her wheezing for hours. Despite designated smoking areas, the smoke often found its way into non-smoking zones, making the workplace feel less inclusive for individuals like Sarah. The residue that lingers. Third-hand smoke adds another layer of complexity to the workplace challenge. Smokers who take quick breaks often return with the smell of smoke clinging to their clothes, hair, and belongings. In closed environments like offices, this residue can become a source of discomfort for non-smokers, especially those with allergies or sensitivities. Noah had once shared a cubicle with a smoker. Although the coworker didn't smoke indoors, the lingering smell of smoke on their belongings made the workspace unpleasant. It was a daily reminder of how smoking affected not just the smoker, but everyone around them. Employer responsibilities. Noah believed that workplaces had a responsibility to create environments that were safe and healthy for all employees. This didn't mean ostracizing smokers, but rather fostering a culture of mutual respect and understanding. Employers could take steps like providing clear smoking policies, outlining where smoking is allowed, and enforcing rules consistently. Creating ventilated smoking areas, ensuring designated areas are far enough from entrances and shared spaces to minimize exposure. Offering support to quit smoking, providing resources like counseling or smoking cessation programs to help employees quit. Encouraging dialogue. Noah often found that addressing workplace smoking required open dialogue. He remembered a time when he raised concerns about smoking with his manager. Instead of dismissing his worries, the manager organized a team meeting to discuss the issue. The result was a compromise. Smokers agreed to use a designated area farther from the building, and non-smokers committed to respecting their break times. It was a small but meaningful step toward creating a more harmonious workplace. Interactive questionnaire for Chapter 6. Have you ever experienced discomfort from smoking in your workplace? How did you handle it? What do you think employers can do to create a healthier balance between smokers and non-smokers? If you're a smoker, how can you ensure your habits don't affect your coworkers? How can workplaces encourage employees to quit smoking without being intrusive? Do you think designated smoking areas are effective in workplaces? Why or why not? Chapter 7. Noah sat across from his friend Marcus at their favorite coffee shop. The air was filled with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee, but it was also tinged with a faint smell of smoke that clung to Marcus's jacket. Noah tried to ignore it, but the scent made his stomach churn. "You're quiet today," Marcus said, lighting another cigarette as they moved to the outdoor seating area. Noah hesitated, debating whether to say something. Their friendship spanned decades, but lately, Marcus's smoking habits had created an invisible barrier between them. The strain of smoking on relationships. Smoking doesn't just affect physical health, it can also strain relationships. For non-smokers, being around someone who smokes can lead to discomfort, resentment, and even conflict. Noah had experienced this firsthand with Marcus, whose frequent smoking breaks often interrupted their conversations. For Noah, it wasn't just about the smell or the smoke itself, it was about the impact on their time together. He felt that Marcus wasn't fully present, often distracted by his need to step away for a cigarette. Family ties and smoking. The strain caused by smoking isn't limited to friendships. Families often feel the impact more acutely. Noah remembered his cousin Amanda, whose relationship with her father had deteriorated because of his smoking. As a teenager, she had pleaded with him to quit, worried about his health and how it affected the family. Despite her concerns, he continued smoking, often dismissing her as overreacting. Over time, Amanda began avoiding family gatherings, unable to cope with the constant exposure to secondhand smoke. Their once close bond grew distant, a casualty of misunderstanding and unspoken hurt. Navigating the conversation. Talking to loved ones about smoking is rarely easy. Noah had struggled with this many times, unsure of how to approach the subject without sounding judgmental. He eventually learned that empathy and understanding were key. Instead of lecturing, he began asking questions. Have you ever thought about how smoking affects the people around you? What do you think would happen if you tried to quit? These conversations were rarely simple, but they opened the door to dialogue, allowing Noah to express his concerns without alienating the people he cared about. Rebuilding connections. Over time, Noah found that some relationships could withstand the strain caused by smoking, while others could not. With Marcus, he learned to set boundaries, asking him to refrain from smoking when they spent time together. Surprisingly, Marcus respected the request, and their friendship grew stronger as a result. With family, Noah found that persistence and compassion were essential. He began sharing stories and resources about the dangers of smoking, not to shame his loved ones, but to inspire them to consider change. Interactive questionnaire for Chapter 7. Have you ever felt that smoking affected your relationship with a friend or family member? How did it make you feel? How would you approach a loved one about their smoking habits without causing conflict? If you're a smoker, how do you think your habits affect the people closest to you? What strategies can families use to support a loved one who wants to quit smoking? How can empathy and understanding improve conversations about smoking and its effects on relationships? Chapter 8. The Financial Burden, the Hidden Costs of Smoking. Noah unfolded the receipt from his pocket and stared at the total. The groceries he had purchased barely fit into 2 bags, yet the cost was staggering. Nearby, a man bought a pack of cigarettes, handing over what seemed like a small fortune for the habit. Noah couldn't help but think about the financial toll smoking takes, not just on individuals, but on families, communities, and society as a whole. The personal costs. Smoking is an expensive habit. For a pack-a-day smoker, the costs add up quickly. In some areas, the average price of a pack of cigarettes is more than $10, which translates to over $3,600 a year. For families already struggling to make ends meet, this expense can mean the difference between paying bills or falling behind. Noah remembered a coworker, James, who frequently complained about his financial struggles. Despite working long hours, James often found himself borrowing money to cover rent or groceries. Yet, he spent $200 a month on cigarettes, a fact he rarely acknowledged when discussing his financial woes. The financial burden of smoking doesn't just end with the cost of cigarettes. Healthcare expenses for smokers are significantly higher due to the increased risk of chronic illnesses like heart disease, cancer, and respiratory conditions. These costs can accumulate over a lifetime, draining savings and placing an additional strain on families. The ripple effect. Smoking's financial toll extends beyond the individual. Employers bear the costs of reduced productivity and higher healthcare premiums for smoking employees. Governments spend billions of dollars annually on smoking-related healthcare expenses, costs that are often passed on to taxpayers. Noah often thought about the ripple effect of these expenses. Money spent on smoking could be redirected toward education, housing, or community improvement. Instead, the financial burden of smoking continued to weigh down society, often in ways that were invisible to those not directly affected. breaking the cycle. For many smokers, the financial cost is one of the most compelling reasons to quit. Noah had spoken to several friends who expressed regret over the money they had spent on cigarettes over the years. Some had tried quitting multiple times, motivated by the desire to save for their children's education or buy a home. Noah believed that breaking the financial cycle of smoking required more than individual willpower. It required systemic support. Policies like higher taxes on tobacco products and smoking cessation programs funded by tobacco companies were steps in the right direction. A community solution. In his community, Noah advocated for initiatives that highlighted the financial benefits of quitting smoking. He partnered with local organizations to host workshops on budgeting and financial literacy, using smoking as a case study to illustrate how small changes could lead to significant savings. During one workshop, a woman shared how quitting smoking had allowed her to save enough money to take her family on their first vacation. Her story inspired others in the group, showing them that quitting wasn't just about health, it was about reclaiming financial freedom. Interactive questionnaire for Chapter 8. Have you ever considered the financial impact of smoking on individuals and families? What stands out to you? How do you think the money spent on smoking could be better used? If you're a smoker, how much do you estimate you spend on cigarettes each month or year? What role do you think financial incentives play in encouraging people to quit smoking? How can communities and governments address the financial burden of smoking on society? Chapter 9. The Cultural Shift, Changing Perspectives on Smoking. Noah scrolled through an old family photo album, pausing at a picture of his grandparents sitting on the porch. In their hands were lit cigarettes, their relaxed smiles framed by thin wisps of smoke. In those days, smoking wasn't just a habit, it was a cultural norm, a symbol of social status and relaxation. Looking back, Noah realized how much perspectives on smoking had changed over the years. From glamorous to hazardous. In the mid-20th century, smoking was widely advertised as glamorous and sophisticated. Cigarette ads featured movie stars, athletes, and even doctors endorsing tobacco products. Smoking was ingrained in social rituals, from business meetings to family gatherings. Today, public awareness campaigns and scientific research have drastically reshaped public opinion. Smoking is now seen as a health hazard rather than a status symbol. Warnings about the dangers of smoking are prominent on packaging, and many public spaces have adopted smoke-free policies. Noah often marveled at how far society had come in recognizing the harms of smoking. Yet, he knew there was still work to be done. Despite progress, smoking remained prevalent in certain demographics and cultural contexts, often driven by factors like stress, addiction, and social acceptance. The role of media and education. One of the biggest drivers of this cultural shift has been media and education. Anti-smoking campaigns have used powerful imagery and messaging to highlight the dangers of smoking. From graphic warnings on cigarette packs to emotional commercials featuring former smokers, these efforts have played a key role in changing public perceptions. Noah remembered watching a television ad that featured a mother struggling to breathe through an oxygen mask, her children watching helplessly. The ad ended with a simple yet powerful message: choose life, not cigarettes. That message stuck with him, reinforcing his belief in the power of awareness and education. The influence of policy. Policies have also played a significant role in reducing smoking rates. Higher taxes on tobacco products, bans on smoking in public places, and restrictions on advertising have made it harder for tobacco companies to promote their products. However, Noah recognized that these measures weren't enough on their own. Cultural change required grassroots efforts, communities coming together to challenge norms and create environments where smoking was no longer seen as acceptable. Building a smoke-free future. Noah believed that the next step in the cultural shift was addressing newer challenges, such as the rise of vaping and the continued normalization of marijuana use. While these products were often marketed as safer alternatives to cigarettes, Noah worried about their long-term effects and their potential to undermine progress. To combat this, Noah focused on empowering individuals and communities to make informed decisions. He collaborated with schools to educate students about the risks of smoking and vaping, emphasizing the importance of critical thinking and personal responsibility. Interactive questionnaire for Chapter 9. How have your perceptions of smoking changed over the years? What influenced those changes? Do you think media campaigns have been effective in changing attitudes toward smoking? Why or why not? What role do you think community initiatives play in shifting cultural norms around smoking? How can we address newer challenges, such as vaping and marijuana use, while continuing to reduce cigarette smoking? What ideas do you have for building a smoke-free culture in your community? Chapter 10. A Path Forward. Building Awareness and Accountability. Noah stood at the front of the community center, a mix of nerves and excitement bubbling in his chest. He had spent weeks organizing this event, a workshop designed to educate people about the effects of smoking, not just on themselves, but on those around them. The turnout was better than he had expected. Parents, teenagers, and even a few smokers had gathered to hear his message. Awareness, Noah began, is the first step toward change. But awareness alone isn't enough. We need accountability, not just for smokers, but for all of us as a community. Awareness as a catalyst. Noah knew that most people didn't smoke out of malice. For many, it was a deeply ingrained habit, a coping mechanism for stress, or something they had grown up seeing as normal. However, he also understood that ignorance of the consequences didn't absolve people of responsibility. Raising awareness was about more than just listing the harms of smoking. It was about fostering empathy and encouraging dialogue. Noah shared stories, statistics, and personal anecdotes, hoping to inspire people to reflect on their choices and how they affected others. The role of accountability. Accountability wasn't about shaming or blaming. It was about taking ownership of one's actions. Noah believed that smokers and non-smokers alike had roles to play. For smokers, recognize the impact of their habits on others and take steps to minimize harm, such as avoiding smoking in shared spaces. For non-smokers, approach conversations with smokers respectfully, focusing on mutual understanding rather than confrontation. Noah also emphasized the importance of community accountability. Schools, workplaces, and local governments needed to create environments that supported smoke-free living, from designated smoking areas to public awareness campaigns. Stories of change. During the workshop, a young mother stood up to share her story. She admitted that she had smoked for years, often around her children, without fully understanding the risks. After attending a previous event, she had taken steps to quit. It wasn't easy, she said, her voice trembling. But when I saw how my kids were coughing less and sleeping better, I knew I'd made the right choice. Her story was a testament to the power of awareness and accountability. It reminded Noah that change was possible, even if it came one person at a time. The bigger picture. As the event wrapped up, Noah reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. From his childhood experiences with secondhand smoke to his advocacy work as an adult, he had seen firsthand how smoking affected individuals, families, and communities. He realized that the fight against smoking wasn't just about health, it was about creating a world where everyone felt valued and respected. It was about building a culture of care, where people took responsibility for their actions and supported one another in making healthier choices. Interactive questionnaire for Chapter 10. What does accountability mean to you when it comes to smoking and its effects on others? How can communities create supportive environments that encourage smoke-free living? If you are a smoker, what steps can you take to be more mindful of how your habits affect others? How can non-smokers approach conversations about smoking in a way that fosters understanding and respect? What actions can you take today to raise awareness about the dangers of smoking in your community? Conclusion. The journey through clouds of ignorance has revealed the hidden yet pervasive impacts of smoking on our lives. From the toxic clouds of secondhand smoke to the lingering residue of third-hand smoke, the effects of smoking extend far beyond the individual holding the cigarette. They permeate our air, our spaces, and even our relationships. But this book is not about pointing fingers or placing blame. It's about igniting awareness and fostering accountability. Smokers and non-smokers alike have roles to play in creating healthier, more considerate communities. By understanding the harm caused by smoking, we can approach the issue with empathy and focus on solutions rather than divisions. Change begins with small steps, choosing not to smoke in shared spaces, starting conversations with loved ones, or advocating for smoke-free environments in our neighborhoods. Each action, no matter how small, contributes to a larger movement toward better health and mutual respect. Let us not forget the power of unity. Together, we can create a world where clean air is the standard, not the exception, where every individual, especially children, can thrive without the shadow of smoke lingering in their lives. The path forward requires courage and persistence, but the rewards, healthier families, stronger communities, and a brighter future, are well worth the effort. As we close this chapter, let us carry the lessons of this book into our daily lives. Awareness is just the beginning. The real change happens when we take action. Clouds of Ignorance is now available in paperback and ebook on Amazon. Did you know that in children, third-hand smoke exposure has been associated with an increased risk of respiratory and infectious illnesses, including asthma, bronchiolitis, and pneumonia? If you or someone you may know can and will benefit from this book, join the journey and help spread this message today. Thank you for listening. God bless you.